You are on Crocodile's True Stories channel. Enjoy listening.
I didn't want to go to the party. I remember that clearly. The day before, I sat at the kitchen table half listening while Rachel buzzed around the room, talking about her boss's birthday bash like it was the social event of the year. He rented out a villa outside Austin, she said, practically beaming. Not one of those tiny Airbnbs either. This place has a pool, a private chef, everything. Everyone's going. Everyone. She made it sound like a requirement, not an invitation. She said it would be good for networking, that I should come, smile, shake hands, show people she was married to someone cool. Her word, not mine. I wanted to say no. I should have said no, but I didn't, because she asked me to, because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up, even if your gut's already whispering that something's not right. The villa was nicer than I expected. Spanish-style architecture, arched walkways, and vines crawling up the stucco walls like nature was trying to retake the place. There were maybe 40 or 50 people there, all of them dressed like they'd come straight from a lifestyle magazine. Men in fitted blazers and women in sundresses that probably cost more than our monthly groceries. Everyone smiled too much and talked too loudly. I felt like I'd walked into someone else's life. Rachel introduced me to a few people, her coworker Lila, her manager Steve, a woman named Becca who I think ran PR. And then there was Justin. Justin with the slicked back hair, 2 white teeth, and the kind of handshake that made you feel like you were in a sales pitch. "So you're the husband," he said, smiling at me like I was a Labrador. "Rachel said great things about you." I didn't know then what I was looking at. I shook his hand, nodded, laughed at some joke I can't even remember now. But I noticed things. The way Rachel touched his arm when she talked. The way he looked at her a second too long. The little inside jokes they already seemed to share. At the time, I pushed it aside. Told myself I was overthinking. That they worked together. That being comfortable doesn't mean anything more. I wish I'd trusted my instincts. An hour in, I stepped outside to take a phone call from my friend Jordan. He was checking in about the coffee shop, asking how the expansion plans were going. I didn't tell him that Rachel had been vague about the budget these last few weeks. I didn't tell him that our last argument had ended with her storming out and slamming the door. I just told him everything was fine. The word tasted like denial. As I ended the call and turned back toward the house, I caught a glimpse through the kitchen window. There they were, Rachel and Justin, alone. She was laughing, but it wasn't her usual laugh. It was that soft, private one, almost like a purr. Her hand rested gently on his chest, and his fingers were moving slowly, deliberately, down her back, tracing the curve of her spine like it was familiar territory. I didn't move. I just stood there, locked in place, my brain trying to catch up with what my eyes were showing me. I wish I could say I burst through the door or screamed or demanded answers. I didn't do any of that. Instead, I went quiet inside, numb, because when betrayal hits, it doesn't come with sirens or fireworks. It settles in like a cold draft under the door, sudden, invisible, and undeniable. A few minutes later, Rachel walked outside carrying 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to me, gave me a peck on the cheek like nothing had happened, and said, "Sorry I disappeared." Lila wanted to talk about the quarterlies. Lila. The name felt like an insult. I looked at her, really looked. Her hair was a little out of place, her lipstick slightly smudged. I wondered if she even knew, or cared. "Yeah," I said. "No worries." And that was it. I didn't confront her. Not then. I just followed her back to the group, listening to her laugh and toss her hair like she was exactly where she belonged. That's when something in me broke. I watched her for the next half hour, watched how easily she blended in, how convincingly she performed. I saw her clink glasses with Justin across the fire pit while his hand brushed her thigh. So fast and subtle, I wasn't even sure anyone else noticed. But I did. And that's when I made the decision. She was talking to her sister Jenna when I walked over. Jenna's always been different from Rachel. Softer, quieter, more real. She was the kind of person who brought an actual book to the beach and remembered people's dogs' names. She looked up at me mid-sentence, her expression puzzled. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for Rachel's hand. She looked at me, confused, as I gently pulled the wedding ring off her finger. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Shock, maybe, or guilt, but she didn't say anything. Then I turned to Jenna. I held her hand for a moment, then slid the ring onto her finger. Slowly, deliberately, like I was transferring a secret. Jenna froze. Wait, what? Rachel's face went white. No one at the party understood what just happened. A couple of people glanced our way, their conversations faltering. Justin, from across the patio, straightened up and looked at Rachel like he'd just been caught in the spotlight. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The ring wasn't a gift or a gesture. It was a message. To her, to him, to myself. I knew what I saw, and I knew what I had to do. Rachel didn't chase after me when I walked toward the edge of the property, away from the music and the laughter and the lies. She didn't call out or try to explain. She just stood there, frozen in her own performance, unable to pivot now that the scene had cracked. I sat alone on the edge of the pool, staring at the dark water. My fingers were trembling, but I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. 10 years. That's how long we'd been married. And in 10 seconds, I saw more truth than in the past 2 years combined. I didn't know what came next. Not exactly. But I knew that the woman who stood beside me in vows and photos wasn't the same woman who stood too close to Justin in that kitchen. I knew, for the first time in a long time, that this marriage was built on something that had already rotted from the inside. And I knew that ring didn't belong to her anymore. The next morning, I woke up in our bed, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Rachel was already up. I heard her moving around downstairs, pretending like everything was fine. Cabinets opening, the whir of the coffee grinder, music playing low from her phone. The same morning routine we'd followed for years, only now it sounded like noise. Background filler. Cover for what I'd seen. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, letting my thoughts race the way they'd been doing since I left that party. There was a numbness in my chest that hadn't gone away overnight. If anything, it had settled in deeper. I wasn't angry yet. Anger hadn't shown up. What I felt was more complicated, a kind of unraveling. Like I was standing in a house I'd built with my bare hands and just noticed the cracks in the foundation were everywhere, spreading faster the more I looked. When I finally made my way downstairs, Rachel was in the kitchen pouring coffee like it was any other day. She looked up, smiled like she always did, and said, "Morning." Just that. One word. And that was the first moment I realized how easily she could lie. She slid a mug across the counter toward me. "Did you sleep okay?" I nodded, because what was I supposed to say? Actually, no. I didn't sleep okay because I watched you put your hand on another man's chest like it was second nature, then lie to my face about it? That would have shattered the illusion too fast. I wasn't ready to detonate the truth. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed the pieces. And once I started looking, they came fast. After she left for work, I sat alone at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around the mug she'd given me. It was still warm, but I hadn't taken a sip. I just stared into it, and memories started to flood in, moments I dismissed, shrugged off, or never thought twice about. Suddenly, they were all lining up like puzzle pieces. There was the time I came home early from work and she jumped like I'd startled her, even though she was just sitting on the couch. She quickly closed her laptop and said she was watching a documentary, but when I asked which one, she couldn't remember the title. Then there was the new perfume. Not subtle, either bold, spicy, the kind of scent you wear when you want to be noticed. She'd never been into fragrance before. When I commented on it, she smiled and said she'd gotten a sample from a friend. But the bottle was full. Brand new. Expensive. There were more signs, of course. Passwords changed without warning. New clothes showing up with vague explanations. Random wins at work she celebrated with gifts. A watch for me. A surprise dinner reservation. A bottle of scotch I hadn't asked for. I used to think she was just being thoughtful. Now, I wondered if they were guilt offerings, bribes, distractions. And then, of course, there were the work trips. She'd started traveling more, flying out for client meetings, that never lined up with anything on her company's public calendar. When I asked about the disconnect, she brushed it off, said consultants didn't always follow the internal schedule, that everything was last minute, that Justin was leading most of them. Justin. That name had always sounded harmless before, but now it rang in my head like an alarm. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our old texts, eyes scanning for signs I'd missed. She was careful, I'll give her that. Nothing too obvious. But there were holes, gaps, times when she claimed to be in one city but her location tag said another. Photos from hotel rooms where the curtains didn't match the chain she said she was staying at. I remembered a weird moment from 3 months ago when I'd borrowed her laptop while mine was updating. I tried to log into our shared finances, and the password had changed. She said it was for security, that she'd read about a phishing scam and updated everything. But she never gave me the new login. Said she'd handle it. Back then, I didn't push. I figured she was just being protective. Or maybe I didn't want to admit the obvious, that she was boxing me out, walling off the parts of our life we were supposed to share. And now that I was finally seeing it all, I couldn't stop. That day passed in a blur. I didn't go into the coffee shop. I told our manager, Elise, that I wasn't feeling well. That was only partially a lie. I didn't feel well. I felt like my entire world was shifting under my feet. Everything that had once seemed solid was now shaking. When Rachel came home, she was all smiles. Said her meeting ran late, then joked about ordering takeout instead of cooking. I watched her laugh while she scrolled on her phone, casually tossing out comments about her day. Her lies had rhythm, practice. She was good at this. Too good. That night, lying next to her in bed, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hand on Justin's chest. The way she smiled at him. The way his fingers moved down her back with so much familiarity. I turned away from her and stared at the wall until the sun came up. The next morning, I didn't bother pretending. I didn't drink the coffee she made or make small talk. I just nodded as she left, told her to have a good day. She kissed me on the cheek, like always, and walked out the door like she wasn't carrying a grenade in her purse. I waited until she was gone. Then I started digging. Old receipts, browser histories. Her laptop had a password, but she used the same code for everything, her late father's birthday. I guessed it on the second try. Her emails didn't tell me much, but her calendar? That was different. There were appointments logged under aliases. Not just lunch with Justin, but vague things like catering consult or vendor check-in. They were color-coded gray, neutral, easy to miss if you didn't look closely. But the timestamps matched the nights she came home late. The work dinners. The team strategy sessions. I opened the drawer where she kept old phones and devices and found her tablet, the one she used when we traveled. It was still linked to our home Wi-Fi, still logged in. And that's when the real confirmation came. Photos. Dozens of them. Some were in hotel rooms, others in cars, restaurants, even selfies taken in elevators. Always the same man with her, always Justin. His hand on her thigh, her smile pressed against his cheek. Her hair down, her dress wrinkled. No wedding ring on her hand in any of them. The final blow was a short video, less than a minute, just the two of them lying in bed. He was filming. She was laughing, playfully covering her face. "Stop," she whispered, her voice light and an asterisk mate. "Someone's gonna see." And he said, "Let them." I paused the video, my finger hovering over the screen like it might burn me. There it was. No more doubt. No more what-ifs. Rachel wasn't just drifting. She wasn't just confused. She had crossed every line, burned every bridge, and lit a match to our life while I stood clueless on the other side. I sat in silence for a long time after that. No tears, no screaming, just silence. Because betrayal doesn't always hit you like a slap. Sometimes it settles in quietly, like a fog. And once it's in, it doesn't leave. It was a Sunday afternoon when the final nail in the coffin fell into my lap. Literally. Rachel had gone out to grab groceries. A task she now took an oddly long time to complete. I stayed behind, still pretending not to know. At that point, I'd already collected more than enough signs. Her excuses no longer mattered. I was simply letting the weight of her own actions bury her. But I wasn't expecting help from someone who still called me Uncle. Ethan, Rachel's nephew, was staying with us temporarily. He was 17, quiet, always had his headphones in and kept mostly to himself since moving in after Rachel's brother passed. I never thought he noticed much. I assumed, like most teenagers, he was off in his own world, tapping through TikTok and avoiding eye contact. Turns out Ethan had noticed plenty. He walked into the kitchen with a confused look on his face, holding Rachel's tablet like it had just bit him. This yours?" he asked. "Found it on the counter. It was still unlocked." He paused, then added, "I wasn't snooping, I swear. It just opened to the photo app." I didn't react right away. I just took the tablet, thanked him, and watched as he walked off to his room, his posture weirdly stiff, like even he could feel the awkwardness hanging in the air. I looked down at the screen. It was still lit, open to a photo album titled Work Trips 2024. Harmless at first glance. But the thumbnail preview was enough to make my breath catch. Rachel and Justin. Again. This time they were lying in bed together. One hotel robe between them. Her makeup smudged. His hand resting comfortably on her bare hip. They looked too comfortable. Too familiar. Like they'd just finished something they did all the time. I tapped into the album, my fingers numb. There were at least 20 photos, some recent, some months old. All private. Int asterisk mate. Casual in a way that only happens when people stop feeling guilty. In one, she was holding a glass of wine while he kissed her shoulder. In another, they were both looking into the camera, sun pouring through hotel windows behind them. My hands were shaking. I swiped again and found a short video clip. She was lying on a hotel bed in lingerie, the same one I found in a receipt she said was just a splurge for herself. Justin's voice was behind the camera, low and teasing. "Say hi to your husband," he joked. Rachel laughed, that soft, bedroom kind of laugh, and rolled onto her side. "He's probably home baking muffins again," she said, completely clueless. That hit harder than anything else. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It wasn't even emotional. It was dismissive, like I was some background character in her real life. Something to joke about while she played house in hotel rooms with someone else. I paused the video and let the tablet fall to the counter with a soft thud. I don't know how long I stood there. Time stopped meaning anything. The house around me, once filled with memories we built together, now felt like a stranger's space. The walls looked fake. The kitchen smelled sterile. The wedding photo on the mantel looked like two people I didn't know. And in the middle of it all, her teenage nephew sat in the other room, headphones on, probably pretending not to have seen anything. But he had. And now, so had I. When Rachel came home an hour later, I was still in the kitchen. I'd packed the tablet back into its case and placed it beside the fruit bowl like nothing happened. She walked in carrying 2 grocery bags and gave me a quick smile. "Hey," she said cheerfully. "You okay?" I nodded. "Need help unpacking?" She waved me off. "Nah, I got it." She was humming. She was literally humming while I stood 10 feet away holding a truth that would crater our lives. It was unreal how normal she looked. Like someone who hadn't spent the last year living a double life. I watched her as she moved around the kitchen, unloading kale and oat milk, chatting about a new espresso machine she saw at the store. And I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just good at lying. She was thriving in it. I didn't say anything then. Couldn't. I needed time. Space. I needed to figure out who I was now that my marriage had turned out to be fiction. Because this wasn't about just her anymore. It was about the business we co-owned, the family we built around us, the stories we told other people about what we meant. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at my phone for a long time. I ended up texting Jenna, her sister. "Can we talk? Just you and me. It's important." She replied almost immediately. "Of course. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. I didn't know how to answer that yet. Later that night, while Rachel showered, I locked myself in my office. I pulled the photos off the tablet, copied them to a flash drive, and encrypted the folder. Then I made backups. on another USB, in the cloud, on a hard drive I'd kept from college. Because I knew what came next. Once the truth was out, it wouldn't just be emotional fallout. Rachel would pivot. She'd spin. She'd try to control the narrative. She might even try to play victim. I'd seen that manipulative glint before in smaller moments, now clearly rehearsals for bigger ones. So I prepared. Because if this was war, I was going in with receipts. The hardest part was acting normal. For the next few days, I had to eat dinner beside her, watch Netflix with her, share space with her, all while carrying the weight of what I knew. The laughter she faked, the way she reached for my hand out of habit. It was all noise now, a broken record. Ethan didn't say anything, but I caught him watching her differently. His eyes flicked toward her when she talked, then back to me. Maybe he was figuring it out on his own. Maybe he already had. One night, as we cleared the table after dinner, Rachel glanced at me and said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay at the shop?" I smiled. "Yeah, just some bookkeeping stuff. You know how it is." She nodded, completely unaware of what was coming. That night, after she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again. Only this time I wasn't spiraling. I was planning, because now I had the truth. Not suspicions. Not half-finished thoughts. Proof. And no matter how carefully she tried to curate the lie, no matter how sweetly she smiled or how convincingly she pretended, the screen didn't lie. The photos didn't lie. Her voice in that video, mocking, carefree, unbothered, didn't lie. The woman I married had become someone I didn't recognize. And the only thing left to do was burn the mask. I always thought betrayal would hurt most in the heart. Turns out it hurts worse in the wallet. Especially when you built the business with your own two hands and trusted someone else to hold the keys while you focused on the grind. The day I discovered the financial hole we were standing in, it was sunny, annoyingly sunny. The kind of day where the world looks bright enough to convince you nothing could possibly go wrong. Birds chirping, wind soft through the trees, customers trickling in for cold brews and pastries. Just another day at our little coffee shop. Only it wasn't. The moment that changed everything started with a missed payment alert on my phone. I was halfway through steaming oat milk when the email buzzed. Vendor invoice overdue, 17 days past due. That didn't make sense. Rachel handled invoices. That was our deal. I ran the front of house, trained staff, made the place feel like home. She managed the spreadsheets, the payroll, the boring back-end stuff I never had the patience for. She said she liked it that way. I remember reading the alert 3 times. Then once more. Then setting down the pitcher, walking past a customer mid-order, and going straight into the back office. I logged into our shared accounting platform. It took me 2 tries to remember the password. She'd changed it a few months ago, for security. But I'd written it down. What I found when I logged in was silence. The kind of silence that only comes when your stomach drops so fast you forget how to breathe. 3 large wire transfers had been made over the last 5 months. Not 1, not 2, 3. Each one bigger than the last. Each one to the same unfamiliar account name. Cambridge Strategies LLC. Supposedly a consulting firm. $12,800 in March. $22,000 in May. $31,500 in July. Gone. Just like that. Disguised under invoice codes labeled Business Expansion Planning, Operational Review, and Consulting Phase 3. All approved. All signed off with Rachel's digital signature. My mouth went dry. I clicked deeper, scanned through notes she'd attached, emails between her and what looked like a business address. But there was no trace of this firm on our original plan. No link to our licensed vendors, and no sign of any deliverables. Just vague language, PowerPoint attachments, PDF summaries filled with buzzwords like momentum leverage and market pivoting. It was corporate nonsense designed to say nothing. She didn't just take the money. She laundered it through an illusion. I pulled out our original roadmap binder, the one we built together in year 2 of the shop. I'd written out our targets in blue ink. Rachel had color-coded action items. We used to laugh about how old school we were. No fancy apps, just grit. That binder was clear. No consulting firm. No outsourcing of strategic planning. No massive transfers without mutual consent. In fact, on page 4, Rachel herself had written in bold, all financial shifts above $5,000 required joint review. And yet here we were, nearly 70 grand gone. No joint review. No heads up. No anything. I sat back in the chair and just stared at the monitor. My heart wasn't racing anymore, it had given up. Instead, there was this heavy, pressing stillness in my chest, like someone had filled my lungs with wet cement. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started digging. It got worse. There were subtle changes to our articles of incorporation, updated with the state business registry, showing a reallocation of equity percentages. I was listed now as 40%. Rachel, 60%. A transfer done via notarized e-signature while I was in San Diego last spring for a roasting seminar. There was also a new operations manager listed on the admin account. Name Justin K. Email J. Klein@bridgestrat.com. It didn't hit me right away. And then it did. Justin, the consultant, the man with his hands on my wife and now on my business. I actually laughed. A bitter, humorless sound that came out more like a cough, because it was so absurd it almost didn't feel real. While I'd been making foam art hearts and teaching new hires how to balance the register, Justin and Rachel had been rewriting the foundation beneath me. I was the one pouring lattes while they were pouring gasoline on everything I helped build. I called the number listed on the invoices, straight to voicemail. I sent an email requesting clarification on the transfers. It bounced. The domain no longer existed. She'd deleted it. Or maybe they'd moved on, burned the bridge already and left the ashes behind. That night I confronted her, not directly, not yet. But I asked a loaded question, careful to keep my voice steady. Hey, do you remember that consulting group we talked about a while back? Cambridge? She barely looked up from her phone. Yeah, what about them? They were pretty expensive, right? I said, watching her closely. She shrugged. It was necessary. You said you didn't want to get bogged down with the back end. That part was true. I said that. But I'd never said, take our cash and funnel it into a black hole. I nodded like I understood, like it all made sense. She kissed me on the cheek later, like always, like she hadn't just stolen half of what I owned. I slept on the couch that night, claiming a headache. In truth, I couldn't lay next to her anymore, not knowing what I knew, not with all those numbers carved into my memory, those transfers echoing in my skull like footsteps in an empty room. The next day, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Olivia. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who made you feel like she'd seen every lie in the book and knew how to underline the truth in red. I handed her the printed copies of the transactions, the account changes, the revised equity documents. She skimmed through them, lips pressed together. Did you sign any of this? No, I said. She tapped one of the pages. This is going to get messy. I figured. She looked up. But you have leverage. You caught it in time. Barely. She leaned back in her chair. What's her motive? I paused. Thought about the photos. The hotel room videos. The quiet laughter. Justin. I met Olivia's eyes. Control, I said. She wanted everything. The business, the money, and someone else. Olivia nodded once, slow. We'll start with a cease and desist on any further transfers. Then freeze the accounts. And after that, you're going to need a forensic audit. We need to track every cent. I nodded, heart pounding again, but this time with clarity. Direction. She slid a form toward me. This is the beginning. I signed it without hesitation. By the time I left her office, the sun had started to dip behind the buildings downtown. I drove home with the windows down, the air thick and humid, Austin's late summer heat wrapping around me like a second betrayal. Rachel was in the kitchen when I got home, making pasta, wearing my old college sweatshirt like she hadn't hollowed out my trust and set fire to our foundation. She turned and smiled. You okay? She asked, twirling a spoon. I nodded. Yeah. I lied. Just thinking. She came over, kissed me softly and said, We'll be fine. Everything's going to work out. And I nodded again. Because by then, I knew something she didn't. Everything was already working out. Just not for her. A week after I froze the business accounts, I got an email with the subject line, "Opportunity to rebuild, business recovery consulting." First, I almost deleted it. The sender's name was Emma L., a consultant claiming she specialized in small business revitalization. Her pitch was polished. Clean formatting, bulleted strategies, case studies I didn't ask for. Normally, I wouldn't have even clicked past the intro. I had enough consultants in my life already. Thank you very much. But one thing stopped me cold. The firm's name. Lark and Lumen Recovery Partners. Lark. Something about that word scratched at the back of my brain. A name I hadn't heard in years. Then it clicked. Emma Lark. She and Rachel used to be close. College roommates, I think. They fell out of touch, or so I was told, but I remember seeing Emma in old Facebook photos, tagged in blurry sh*TS with wine glasses and bachelorette sashes. Emma had this sleek, corporate kind of energy. She was always a little too intense, the type who asked questions that felt more like evaluations. Rachel used to say she outgrew her. I didn't press. Not my business. But now she was back. Out of nowhere. Pitching herself as a savior to the exact man Rachel had spent months betraying. I didn't reply. Not at first. Instead, I started digging. Her firm's website was new, barely 6 months old. The branding was crisp, full of smiling business owners and generic success stories. But something about the language echoed what I'd seen in those fake Cambridge invoices. Phrases like targeted pivoting, lean capital funneling, and modular expansion frameworks. Empty buzzwords masquerading as strategy. I ran a reverse WHOIS lookup on the domain. That's when it got strange. The site had been registered under a corporate holding address also linked to Cambridge Strategies LLC. The same firm Rachel sent money to. The same company that vanished as soon as I started asking questions. The deeper I went, the more connections I found. Emma and Justin had co-listed several shell companies in Delaware. They shared board seats in a defunct marketing agency. They even appeared together in an archived panel discussion about consulting ethics in emerging markets, which now felt like a dark joke. My stomach turned. It was all connected. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Rachel hadn't just cheated. She'd conspired. While I was roasting beans and managing baristas, she and Justin had been siphoning funds into a fake firm, and now that I'd cut them off, they were sending in Emma to offer a life raft. A Trojan horse. She even mentioned in her email that she heard about recent financial tension and asset lockdowns, and had experience with relationship-based businesses. That wasn't coincidence. That was surveillance. I couldn't figure out how much Emma knew. Maybe she thought I was still in the dark. Maybe she thought I was desperate. But the fact that she reached out this quickly told me one thing: they weren't done. I'd cut the wire mid-fuse, but the plan hadn't finished burning. I stared at her email for a long time, then forwarded it to Olivia, my lawyer. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Olivia didn't waste time. "She's bait," she said. "They're trying to get you to expose your next move. You think she knows Rachel? I think she's been in the room the entire time, just using a different name." That's when it hit me. The consulting documents. The planning files. Some of them were co-authored. Lowell. Emma Lowell. The same initials that signed off on the expansion assessment Rachel supposedly received. The woman pitching me now had already been inside the business. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, adrenaline prickling behind my eyes. It wasn't just a side hustle or an affair. It was a coordinated dismantling of everything I'd built. They were playing the long game. Plant Justin. Drain accounts. Trigger collapse. Then send Emma in with a tailored pitch just as I was at my lowest. I wasn't just a mark. I was a case study. That night, Rachel was in the backyard watering plants when I walked out with my phone. "I got an email today," I said casually. She looked up. "From who?" "Emma." She blinked, then recovered fast. "Emma who?" "Emma Lowell." The pause before her response was too long. "That's random. Haven't heard from her in years." She says she can help rebuild the shop. Rachel turned back to the plants. Well, maybe she's just trying to reconnect. I nodded slowly. Sure, maybe. She didn't ask to see the email. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. Later that night, after she went to sleep, I combed through old photos again. I found a picture from a New Year's Eve party 3 years ago. Rachel and Emma, arms around each other, champagne flutes in hand. In the background, half hidden by glare, was a third person, Justin, smiling, glass raised, like he'd been part of their world long before I ever knew his name. I saved the photo. By morning, I had the pieces I needed. I had Olivia draft a cease and desist to Lark and Lumen. I included *TS of the shell companies, proof of shared ownership, archived pages tying Emma to Justin. I didn't bluff. I didn't threaten. I just stated the facts. If they took another step toward me or my business, legal action would follow. Emma never replied. But 2 days later, her website went down. Not under construction. Gone. Just like Cambridge. But the storm wasn't over. That Friday, I got a call from my dad. He sounded confused. Son, he said. A woman came by today, said she was a consultant, Emma something, and she was interested in helping you lease part of the land. Something about refinancing your business? I didn't sign anything. The world tilted. She came to the farm? I asked. Yeah. Said she was a friend of yours. Thought it was strange you didn't mention it. My mouth went dry. Don't do anything. Don't answer the door if she comes back. My dad was quiet. Is this something we should be worried about? I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Yeah.